Thank you very much. That's all you got for me?
That is it.
Excellent.
This is Groundeffected. If you want a chance to win a GK3T, then you gotta watch this video so you can find out exactly how. I'll tell you how. Just leave a comment, by the way, and then we'll get to the part where I explain a little bit more about it. But I do want to mention that Uniformation did send me a new GK3 Ultra. This is the large printer. A lot of people are confused about this T Ultra Pro situation. The large one is the GK3 Ultra. It's so big that one 6 scale statue fits completely on one singular build plate. That is correct. One build plate with a easy flip of a switch, handle click thing. You know what I mean. You pull it off and look what you got. An entire model. The whole thing on one build plate. Although I will just quickly admit that there wasn't just one build plate. That is because there is a little piece on this particular model that needs to be printed in clear, and this I printed in the Uniformation it's Uniformation's resin, and it's the clear, crystal clear, and I will leave a link for that resin as well as the GK3 Pro and the GK3 Ultra in the description down below. If you are interested in looking at them, Uniformation does support my channel, so I did not receive any money for this, nor did I receive any payment of making a video or any of the, basically they sent me the machine, and because of sending me the machine, then I get to have an affiliate link, which means if I sell a machine, then I get a little bit of money.
This video was sponsored by My Custom Models, and I'm going to tell you more about them right now. My Custom Models is a Patreon over on Patreon who creates models for you to 3D print and paint for yourself. These models can be had if you subscribe. Of course, you need to print them yourself, and they do offer some pre-supported options. I've made a couple of their models before. This is one of them. You may remember that video, but they make some models over on Patreon, and if you're interested in this model specifically, well, then you need to go into the description to find a link for them and go download it for yourself. And as you may have noticed, there is a 3D printer in the beginning of this video that I'm talking about, and of course, if you're interested in that, there is a link for that too down in the description. Now, I'm not sponsored by Uniformation, however, they do support my channel, and usually if I have something go wrong, they will help me out in replacing those parts. Of course, that is a privilege that I have due to my position in obviously the community, which I have no idea how I even got here in the first place. So I'm just as surprised as you are that they support me in the first place. But that support does come in the form of many things, for example, like resin. And luckily for me, they sent me this transparent resin, which I've personally come to like quite a lot. Yes, it does have a slight blue tint to it. Of course, I'm now showing you it a lot, but it does have a slight blue tint to it, which I'm totally okay with. But this is fully cured, and as you can tell, it's not yellow. That is the important part when it comes to transparent resins for me, is the yellowing, and the yellowing drives me absolutely nuts. But let's not worry about that. I've got a lot to do. I need to paint this model, and I literally have 2 days. This is starting to become a theme of only having 2 days to paint a model, and I'm starting to become pretty good at making the time limit. There are some unique things about this model that I'm going to have to go over, and that's going to be some transfer stuff that I need to stick on there, as well as on the TV as well. I'm considering putting an LED inside there, but you'll have to stick around to see if I do. Let's stop waffling though, and let's get some primer onto these models and start painting this damn thing. I know somebody is going to be asking me, what is that disc that I'm using to sand with? That is an abrasive polishing wheel. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I literally just typed that into in Amazon, and Amazon will give me a result that looks very similar to that thing. I have to just do a video on these things one day, and I will. I promise you I will, but
in case you were wondering, that's the way that I found it. Now, I have been using Gallery's Collado primer for a while lately, and while I was picking it up, I noticed that I had a bunch of these paints. Now, of course, I'm painting the little game station thing on the base, and that thing needs to look like a piece of plastic. So I chose to use these paints because these paints already shine. They are glossy, so if you are looking for a matte paint, this is not the paint that you want for matte, because they are not matte at all. But Vallejos, on the other hand, are exceptionally matte, and I chose to use this color to paint the cartridges for a very specific reason. This is because it's an easy color to use with my brush, and I know I can get it flat enough. So by doing this, it means that I don't have to mask off anything, particularly the game that is inside of the console itself, and this made it easier for me to just paint it later. Now, for all of the skin tones, I'm going to lay down a white primer over the top for a zenithal. Normally, I would be using an ink for this, but I have found that these Gallery primer paints go through the airbrush so well that I don't even need to thin them or anything, which obviously makes my life easier and quicker. And this is not a paid for sponsor, by the way. They sent me some for free, sure, but they never told me that I'm gonna say anything about it, and they never even gave me a single penny. In the last couple of models, I have been breaking my own rule. This is a dirty lens. I've been breaking my own rule about painting the model's base before I paint the model, and I'm doing it again. So I'm gonna stop right now, arrest this situation, and I'm gonna fix it by concentrating on painting the base stuff. Now, the base is pretty simple, really. It is just a little bit of wood, but this TV is a little bit of a thing, and there is some cartridges for the games which I need to do some stuff for. And by stuff, what I mean is use the iPad, and luckily Nikki has given me the little pictures that I need. There is some extra stuff that I might need though for the top of here, although I might just paint those. I'll obviously need to make a hole or an opening for me to put a battery and LED in here, and so I'm going to use this polishing disc to cut a hole in this thing. This is not the correct tool. You should not do this, and as a father myself, I'm telling you, this is not the thing you should do, but it worked. So if it works for you, then, you know, as long as no one's not watching, like maybe 100,000. Anyway, I had to do a thing that I absolutely hate, and everybody knows that I hate that, and that is masking. However, for something like this, I accept it because it's actually kind of fun. Just a little tip and trick here. When you're masking stuff like this, you're going to need to cut it, and when you cut it, put a brand new blade in your knife, because if you don't, you're gonna have a very bad time, and that's gonna be not my fault because you just didn't listen to me. Given the style that the TV is sculpted in, I figured that it'd be best to paint this in the retro look that it actually has. And the way I decided to do this was just basically put down what I would consider a base color of the wood that this cabinet is made out of. And once I had got the base color down, I gave it an edge highlight just to slightly lighten the edges a bit before coming back in using some snakebite leather and a very small paintbrush. I'm going to paint in what kind of looks like wood grain, and this is super cartoony and really dumb, but it actually looked quite cool when it was done. The only thing about this is that painting the wood grain over the top obviously means that it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So in order to start disguising that and making it look a little bit more part of the wood itself, I'm going to spray a couple of paints over the top, namely a bit of a tint over everything to make it a bit yellower, and some of this kind of light yellow tanny brown color. I'm going to spray that over the top of the corner edges just to give it a bit of a highlight around the edges. I'm then going to work on the wood on the front panel, but this needs to be a different color. But at the same time, while doing that, I realized that I just didn't have enough value in the wood on the base itself, and so I sprayed some agrax over the top of it. For the little panel in the front, I just used a sponge and a bunch of different browns and just kind of like sprayed over the top of things, sponged it off, sprayed over the top, sponged it off again until I was satisfied with that. On the little wires, I used a gloss black in hopes that it would save me having to put a gloss clear coat over the top of it later. I did this over the little NES thing. I don't even know what it's called, but that game I never had one of these, by the way. I was a little bit I don't know if I missed this generation or something, but I had a Sega Mega Drive, and that was all I had, and that was if I was lucky enough to play it. So I don't know what this is, and I never got to play one of these when I was a kid. Don't feel sorry for me. Just leave a comment in the description below the description, because you can't actually write in the description. Speaking of descriptions, by the way, there is going to be in this video a giveaway, and the way this is going to work is that I'm going to give someone a 3D printer, except for it's not me, it's Uniformation. Uniformation have given me the permission to give away one of their GK3T. This is the baseline GK3 printer, and I'll tell you straight up, this machine is incredible. It's absolutely an amazing machine, and probably one of the best things you could be given for free. So if you want one, well, then you need to go in the place where I said, just below the description, the comment section, and leave a comment. It doesn't matter what you comment. I'm going to be using a random comment generator to pick up whoever the winner is. And by the way, it's not only just one thing, it's going to be a GK3, and also the second place is going to win some resin, 3 bottles of resin, and that's it. I just want to quickly talk about this thing that I showed you here, by the way. The easiest way to do electronics inside of this thing, you don't need switches, you don't need wires, you don't need a soldering iron, you don't need nothing. You need some button batteries and some LEDs, and you literally just shove it to it, put some tape around it, glue a magnet inside, and stick that thing to the magnet. Bob is your uncle, you have a light in your model, and you don't even have to do electronics. Hopefully you got the information about that competition, even though it's not a competition, it's just a giveaway. And if you didn't, well, I will try to remind you again at the end of this video. But let's talk about the base. And on the base itself, it has some wood, and so in order to paint that wood, I used a dark brown at first with a dry brush. Obviously, these dry brushes are from Artist Opus, and I absolutely love them, by the way. They are incredibly good dry brushes. They are some of my favorite tools that I've received in the last while. But I don't want to harp them up too much, and I want to talk about the base just to explain what's going on. I did a load of browns, and then I tinted it. I was then not satisfied with that, so then I used more colors to try tint things. Also, you can see I'm going up between the middle of each plank in order to make them kind of stand out separate from each other. Eventually ended up settling on a Sagor brown and spraying that directly up the center of each one of the planks, and then also spraying a bit towards the back to give it some depth. I then painted around the rim of the base using black, and then once that was completely dried, I came back in using a gloss varnish clear lacquer, and this I sprayed very carefully, trying to just only hit the edge and not get any over the top surface. Although I did get some, and I used a bit of a satin varnish to spray just over the top and fix that. For the little transfers, I decided to use water slide decals, which you can print yourself, by the way. You can buy this stuff on Amazon. It's pretty cheap, and you can print it in your printer at home. Just make sure you buy the right one. If you've got a laser printer, buy the laser printing stuff, and if you've got inkjet, well then, you know, get the inkjet stuff. And once you've printed it, you spray a layer of clear matte varnish over the top and make sure that it's fully dried. And because this stuff is clear or transparent, I basically needed to make sure that there was a light background for it, because any light colors would just not show up at all. So I painted a deck tan square over the space that this was going on. Luckily on the TV screen though, I didn't have to paint anything. I did put a little bit of white on the inside, but other than that I didn't really need to do much. And you can see this makes it look really nice and bright and shiny. Now of course, a true master of making models would really make an actual little LCD screen in there, of which I did think about doing, but unfortunately due to the time scale of this model, I just did not have time to figure any of that out, nor to even order that part in the first place. I was checking through the footage last night, and I noticed that for some reason I have not got the footage of painting the orcish dermis layers. Basically all I did was sprayed this into the shadows. If I take it into the light here, you can see that it's just, I've pretty much sprayed it from the bottom over all of the black. All of the black that was left over after the zenithal is covered up with orcish dermis. If you imagine, I just went and that's pretty much it. I am really not sure why this has happened and how that footage has got lost, but it has in fact got lost, and so thus forth I'm explaining to you what I did, and now we shall move on. And while we're on the topic of the skin tones, I just want to mention that I do like to try as many different techniques as I can, different ways of layering colors with different types of colors and sometimes the same colors, because I might stumble upon something that someone else might not. This is because of the sheer workload of amount of models that I get done. It means that I have more opportunity to test things. I also get sometimes send stuff that I can test, but also I order things for my shop and I test those things too. So I am my biggest customer in my own shop, and this is the way of the things that I do. But I want to mention with this skin tone, I try to make something a little bit more simpler, and with this in mind, I painted 3 skin tone colors. So Orcish Dermis, Rosy Flesh, and a base skin tone, or basic skin tone. And these were the 3 sort of the colors that I used to create the values on the skin. However, I needed to tint them a bit more, and so to do that I used Guilliman Flesh, which is a contrast paint and can be sprayed neatly through your airbrush without adding any water, but you can add water to it if you want to dull it down a bit. Speaking of adding water though, I do feel like this was still a little bit too desaturated, so I add a load of water, and when I say a load, I mean like literally so much water with a couple of drops of yellow ink, and I spray this over everything. This is to help bring some of the saturation back. I then put a satin clear coat over the top of all of that, and I can then put it aside so that I can basically let it dry. Now, one would think that painting the strap on the side of her leg would be a simple matter of just painting it black. And if you thought that, well, so did I. However, I did feel like that once it was painted black, it looked way too plain and boring, and I was not happy with it. So I painted it with a dark grey instead. I left over the little strap in the center, and then I came back and painted black over the strap in the center around the little piece that goes around her leg, and also the little clip itself. This just made it look a little bit more detailed, and like I put more attention into it. But that's all I really needed to do, with no any highlights or anything like that. You could add them, but I didn't feel like it was necessary. I'm now going to work on the painting that is on her skin, like camouflage stuff, which in my mind I've always thought there was only like 1 or 2 little things, but apparently her entire legs are painted with camouflage, which is helpful if you were trying to be camouflaged, obviously, in this particular outfit, because there is a lot that is not camouflage. But also you do have red socks, which I do not think is the most camouflage thing, so we won't get too much involved in that. However, to paint the camouflage, I painted a brown first, like a yellowy kind of brown, and then very carefully painted on the inside of that with a army green. And once I was done with that, I put it aside to paint the actual sock, which somehow you can obviously see. This didn't happen in different times, by the way. I painted the other boot off camera because it makes no sense to paint every single last little thing. Otherwise, the videos would genuinely be 2 days long. And as much as some people would like that, I don't think many people would watch a 2-day long video. Now, using that exact same camo green, I'm going to paint her suit itself. And once I've completely painted this with a solid color and let it dry, it's going to need some form of a shadow. I could put a highlight as well. However, if I put a highlight on, I'm going to need to spray from the top down. This may possibly get onto the skin, and any green going onto the skin is going to stand out like a sore thumb. So I chose to go the other way around and use some Militarium green and carefully sprayed that into the shadows. A little bit of green in the shadow on skin is not the worst thing in the world, because your eye will read it as an actual shadow. So this is the reason I chose to do it this way rather than a different way. I mean, yeah, you could probably mask off the arms, which would then mean that you could then paint whatever color you want, but I'm pretty satisfied with the color that came out with the green that I used. I then put deck tan over the little triangle on her chest, and then whilst that was drying, I took some of that Militarium green and painted it into the side things, the little textured pieces on the suit, just to make them be a little bit different so that the whole suit isn't one tone all the way through. I then used some red and painted that over the triangle on her chest. I used the exact same technique to paint the straps on the torso as well. And then using some silver from Ammo by Meg, I'm going to paint that over the little triangular dangly pieces that I don't know what they're for, but maybe to attach water bottles or something. And then I can put this torso onto the legs and put the legs onto the base and move on to painting the rest of the bits. Now the next step is going to be painting her gloves, and I figured the easiest way to do this was using a contrast paint, which will make a very weird texture on the surface. This is because this paint kind of pools in areas, and wherever it pools it's darker than wherever it is where it's not pooled, and it's easier to get this flat or smooth through an airbrush, but with a paintbrush it has this weird texture which works perfectly for making a leather. Now we get onto some of the little bit more technical stuff, like for example makeup. And for cheeks to be rosy, I figure that a fluorescent pink thinned down like 50-50 with water gives a really good look to some rosy cheeks. The other thing that I figure is a blue-gray sprayed into the undersides of the top of the eyelid thing, as well as genuinely, like I put a tiny little stripe across the furrow of the brow as well. This helps to create the illusion of a nice dark eyeshadow. While that's drying, before I do anything else on the face, I will quickly paint the red of the hat. And there is also a little scar on her cheek, and for this I use Carabao Crimson, which is red, but it is a wash, so it means I can layer a couple of layers over it. Another thing that I use is a Magos Purple, and I thin this down for the lips just a little bit because she doesn't have very bright lipstick on, but they do need to look like there is a change or a fullness of plumpness of color. I think that is the correct terms. And while all of that is drying, I can quickly paint the hair, and she is a blonde lady, so I paint this color. I'm pretty sure it's called Buff, and it is basically just blonde, really. But the only thing is it's not perfect yet, so I'll need to come back in and add a shadow to this, but we'll get to that later. I used some chestnut brown to quickly paint over the eyebrows, which are quite simple because they are sculpted with a nice ridge. It's easy enough to just follow that ridge. No brush lines for this. There's no need to do any of that if there isn't any space to do it. On her hat she has a little symbol thing, and I quickly painted this with black and then painted some deck tan over the little middle piece of it to give it, I don't know, some more detail or something like that. I also used this time to paint with a thin brush the little black seam around the hat itself, which is kind of difficult to do, but I figured doing it at this time means if I make any messes I can come back with the buff and fix that up. While I have black on my paintbrush though, I will quickly paint her eyeliner, which on this particular model goes all the way around the eye, both on the top and bottom lids, because this is just how the sculptor has rendered his model, so obviously it needs to have this much of the eyeliner all over the place. Now it is a little bit scary doing this on the bottom eyelid, of course, I know this, I'm scared myself as well, but it's just hold your breath and be very careful. That's good advice, I would say. Now remember I said the hair was not good enough on its own, but to literally make it into blonde hair, all I have to do is spray Skeleton Horde into the shadows and suddenly it has a load of depth. Also, by the way, Skeleton Horde, if it goes a little bit onto the skin, won't look too crazy because it is a yellowish tint. It means that the yellow tint that you put on the skin tone will kind of blend in and you won't notice it so much. So that is why I chose to do it that way around. I use highlight skin to paint the sclera of the eyes, of which in this particular model I know are very white because her eyes are black, so the contrast makes it stand out. I also painted her little ponytail things using the same bowl red that I painted all the other red bits on the model with, and then moved on to painting her eyes. And for this I need blue eyes, so I need a dark blue and a light blue. It could be any ones you want, but I specifically chose to use these two colors because it will make her eyes look a little bit icy and have like a nice piercing look to them. Specifically because they are quite small on this model, I figure that the brighter they could be, the better it will be. Once I've got the color of the actual eyes in, I'll then put a black dot for the pupil, obviously, and when that is fully dried, trust me, make sure it is fully dried before you do the next step, which is to add a little bit of white. This is the only white that I ever use, and I use a matte white for this, and I paint that in a specular highlight on the eyes to make them look like they are shining. And to make them really shine, I use gloss over the top, put the head on this model, and call it done.
hopefully you enjoyed watching this video just as much as I enjoyed making this model for making this video. I'll be honest with you, I freaking love doing this. Even though I work like an actual savage, genuinely I have no time to even wipe twice when I'm on the toilet, but I really love what I do. This has been one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever had to do as something that I could even remotely call a job. I want to just quickly mention a couple things here at the end of the video. Even though we mentioned them in the video, most importantly, this video was sponsored by MCM, My Custom Models 3D. Go and look for them in the description down below. And of course, the other most important thing is if you want to win a GK3, well then leave a comment, because that's the only way you can, and I will use, like I said, a random comment picker, and it'll pick one of the comments to win obviously that GK3. This is the end of the video. This is the part where I say a massive thank you to everybody, including Uniformation and the sponsor MCM, and very importantly my Patreons as well. If you are interested in a color palette for this model or any of the models previously, not all of them by the way, because I haven't done it for every single model, I only recently started doing that, but it's there over on the Patreon, my own Patreon, and this supports the channel. This supports me. It keeps the lights on, blinding my eyeballs, and helping me to make videos every single week without having to do a real job, because that's horrible. I don't want to do that. I just want to paint models and make things. That sounds way more fun. Thank you very much to everybody who watches this channel, and this is the part where I get to tell you the thing that everybody if you don't like it, off.